Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be working on a neon geode. Today we're starting off with a prepped white painted base, and we're going to add some Brite from Peachy Olive Glitters to our very first coat of epoxy. You are going to want to make sure that your paint, the white paint, is full coverage because we're not going to have a raw glitter layer covering that, so it will show any imperfections through that. You can see at the very bottom where I got a little bit of a nick on the cup and the spray paint chipped away, and you can see through it. So I'm going to strategically paint my geode around that little chip that you're seeing there, so it will be covered up in the end. Just be cautious because you're not going to be covering the entirety of the white glitter in geode. I'm going to start off with a white paint pen. You're going to want to make sure this is permanent so it doesn't smear. This one specifically is a Posca paint pen. You can use Top Notch, I believe, from either Michael's or Hobby Lobby. Anything that's permanent will work. I would just recommend white because it will show through the glitter if you're not using white. So I'm gonna just do a rough outline of where I want my geode. And if you want to put a name between the two geodes, you're going to want to give a little bit more space on one side of the geode. Just make sure that your paint pen is dry before you're going in with this first step with the Mod Podge and acrylic paint, or it will smear. So you guys have heard me say over and over again that I always use Mod Podge for anything that is intricate, if you're going to be glittering back to back over Crystalette glitter glue because it dries faster. So like that, I'm doing that in this case. And normally I work from darkest to lightest because this geode's so large and it takes so long to get the paint and the Mod Podge laid down. I'm not really concerned about that in this case because by the time I'm ready to go on to the next step, that Mod Podge, that top layer of it has dried, and so it's not really going to cross-contaminate. The only thing I really pay attention to is the yellow color. I save that for last just to make sure because that's something that you're going to be able to very easily see if there is any cross-contamination. Once I had everything glittered, I let that dry overnight, and I sprayed it 3 separate times with the Krylon Triple Thick spray just to make sure there was no movement in the glitters once I applied my epoxy. I put 2 coats of epoxy over this, and I did just a very light sanding, mostly in the purple section because the Dazed glitter is a little bit chunkier than the rest of it. And then I went in and I used my Dremel to sand the rim, and then I used my 80 grit sanding block to buff out any of those little pokey bits that were sticking up, and this was ready to be lined with my paint marker. Once I use my rubbing alcohol to wipe off any of the epoxy dust, I always put a glove on to line my geode. Any oils on your hands can cause the epoxy to repel, and because you have paint marker on your cup, you're not going to be able to wipe that off and get any of those hand oils off of the cup without removing that paint marker. So I always try to use a glove when I'm doing this portion just to avoid any extra work or ripples in epoxy. But you'll see here I'm just going in with the paint marker one side at a time, so there is not any smearing or anything of the marker when you're going through. When I get to the end of this, I'm going to hit it with my heat gun to make sure everything is fully dried. We still have to line the back end of that geode, which means that this end is going to be laying face down on the table, and you don't want anything to smear. You'll see that I did that here. It's just a lot of extra work that you can avoid by just hitting it with a heat gun. So recommend doing that. I always lay a paper towel down to make sure there's no rough surfaces or scratches or anything like that. And I will let this play through without talking. Okay, so now that I've got both sides lined, I'm just gonna go back and hit that other side with my heat gun to ensure everything is fully dry before I'm going in with my vinyl work. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I made sure to leave a little bit of extra gapping on one side as opposed to the other, just to put that name in there. I left about 1.5 inches of gapping. I like to make the names a little bit smaller on these designs so it doesn't take away from the actual geode. So I did that at about 4 inches width and then 1.5 height. I used the font Silence Rockin' from dafont.com. It was just a free font. I will link that in the description box as well. I went went through with a coat of polyacrylic to seal everything in, and then just one final coat of epoxy, and this cup was done. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. If you would like to subscribe, I would love that. If you would like to join my Facebook group, I've linked that in the description box as well. Don't forget to hit that bell button so you get notified next weekend when I post my next tutorial, and I will see you guys next time.